It has been 6 days since the building collapsed in Surfside, Florida, and the frantic search to find any possible survivors grows more desperate by the hour. Today, officials announced the death toll has risen. Rescue crews discovered the bodies of 4 additional victims, bringing the death toll to 16. 147 people are still unaccounted for. The condo collapse is being called one of the worst disasters in our country's history. State officials have promised to convene a grand jury to investigate the cause of the collapse. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says he told families that despite the large task before the rescuers, they are not giving up hope of finding survivors.
I've been meeting with a lot of the families privately to offer any type of support we could provide, offer any type of consolation of the best that we can given the difficult circumstances. And I think that while there's an overwhelming amount of grief, there's just still the apprehension about not knowing for sure. And I know there have been more identifications made today, but rest assured that that those folks are going to be working on that pile, and it's not going to stop, and they're going to get answers one way or another.
For more on this, I want to bring in Danielle Cohen Higgins. She's a commissioner representing District 8 in Miami-Dade County. Commissioner, welcome. Thank you for joining us. There are concerns that some of the pile may actually be holding up what remains of the building. What are the structural concerns there, and what about for the rescue workers who are there 24/7?
Thank you for having me. And let me start by saying our rescue workers are doing everything they can, and they are working around the clock. And their safety is also our priority, in conjunction with finding as many as we possibly can and hopefully rescuing survivors from this disaster. We have structural engineers from our Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Department that are looking at the situation minute by minute to make sure that where our first responders are currently working is as safe as possible. And so we will provide updates regarding the structural integrity of the balance of the condominium building. But right now, the search and the rescue continues.
And our hearts go out to everyone there waiting to hear about loved ones. Now, there are 2 storm systems, Commissioner, in the Atlantic that could become tropical storms, so it's not yet clear if they would threaten the U.S. Are emergency teams preparing to continue these search and rescue efforts with the possibility of severe weather?
Plans are underway currently for these weather systems. It is currently raining. It is very cloudy. And so preparations are being made for additional and more severe inclement weather if it is something that happens to our first responders into the area. So preparations are actively being made for that situation as well.
And have you had the opportunity to speak personally with any of the families? Is there anything specifically that people who want to help from afar can do?
Yeah, I mean, there have been a number of websites that have been set up. Unfortunately, we are learning that there are people taking advantage of the situation. But right now, supportsurfside.org is the place where people can go to look for additional ways to help, including donating to some of the families of some of the missing people currently. And so that is probably the best resource. And I have spoken with family members that have their family members missing currently, and it's incredibly difficult conversations to have. You can only imagine if it was your mother or father or child that still remained missing, what kind of feeling you would endure. And that's why we are not stopping the rescue efforts. There is not any doubt in anyone's mind that rescue will continue, and that's exactly what our first responders are focusing on doing right now.
And in terms of those rescue efforts, are there very specific sort of mapped areas where the rescuers can sort of gauge where people might be? Because obviously to the untrained eye, it just looks like a pile of rubble. But to them, who have so much training in this sort of thing, do they sort of understand where there might be air gaps and where there might actually be the remnants of bedrooms and living rooms?
Yes, there are identified void spaces, and that is exactly for the last 7 days what our first responders have been focusing on, is trying to get access and tunneling and literally digging underneath layers of pancaked concrete to try and access these void spaces. The void spaces are the areas of hope, and that is exactly what our first responders, and it's not just our Miami-Dade County first responders. We have FEMA, we have the Israeli Defense Team on the ground, literally the entire world, and the best resources that we could possibly provide these families are on site right now, working to do everything they possibly can.
And again, our hearts go out to all of them. Well, Danielle Cohen Higgins, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
As the search efforts continue in Surfside, CBS News is talking to families, first responders, and others who are living through this tragedy. We will bring you those stories in a 30-minute special, Surfside Collapse, A Search for Answers. Anchored by CBS News correspondent Manuel Bojorquez. You can stream it tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, right here on CBSN.